Hello, everyone. How are you? Today, I want to talk about violating boundaries. And I want to talk about kind of why this matters, why I wanted to talk about this specifically today. And then I want to move into talking about why this happens and what we can do about it. So, the thing about violating boundaries is they're some of the most painful experiences I think we can have, both for the person that feels as though their boundary was violated or knows that their boundary was violated, but it's also so painful for the people that are violating the boundaries, right? Whether it's intentional or not. And and so I just want to invite you to consider today if there was a way that we could stop this from happening, or at least have it happen less, would we want to? So often when we have had our boundaries violated, we get really, it's just so easy to get caught up in our anger and feeling disrespected and shaming the other person and blaming. And we get really caught up in our story and our own experience. And excuse me. And sometimes we can miss things, and we can miss our opportunities for growth in those experiences. And it's the same on the other side, right? When someone tells you that you've violated their boundary, again, these things are such, nobody wants to be that person, right? And so we can get really caught up in defensiveness and, again, blaming, and it was, well, I didn't know and it was your fault, and whatever, all this stuff. And so on both sides, we can just get caught up in our own stories, our own experiences, our own emotions. And it can make it kind of hard to step back and look at what just happened. Why did it happen? And what can I do about it so that this doesn't continue to happen? So wherever you're at in with this experience, or whatever your experiences have been with this, I just want to invite you to consider that if there was something that we could do about this, would we want to? Are we willing to set aside our stories about it for a moment? Not that they're not important to honor those experiences, and they are valid, but are we willing to kind of look at this and see what we might be missing so that we don't have to continue experiencing this, over and over, or so that we don't have to, it just doesn't feel good to just be so angry and feel so disrespected or feel so defensive. Like, it doesn't feel good to us. And there's just such a better way that we can go through these experiences, quote unquote better, a way that feels so much more loving and peaceful and compassionate and accountable. And there's all these qualities that we can bring to this experience that I believe just improve our lives and our relationships and actually help us to have more connection, more intimacy, and more growth. So that's why we're talking about violating boundaries today. And the other thing I want to say is just that we live in a society that demonizes any human behavior that involves anything socially unacceptable, right? So gaslighting, manipulating, emotional abuse, boundary violations, right? There's some of these things that are just these huge red flags, words that we all want to just be like, nope, not me. And we want to disconnect ourselves from that. Anyone that displays that behavior, right? We shame anyone that displays that behavior, and we do whatever it takes to disassociate ourselves from identifying with these things, because we know these are socially unacceptable. That's not okay. That's bad and wrong. And I don't want anything to do with that. And again, this is not about condoning the behavior. I think accountability is so important in all of this. But what I notice is that when we do that, and we dissociate ourselves from it, what we're failing to acknowledge is that in this humanity that we have and that we all have these things, right? And so, for example, with gaslighting and manipulation, I have experienced those things for sure in relationships and with coworkers, whatever, all kinds of stuff. And most of the time, I believe that people they don't know they're doing it, right? It's sort of an unconscious behavior that comes out. And what happens again is that we associate that behavior with the person, right? Oh, they're just a terrible person. I can't believe they would do that. And what I have experienced most of the time is like, yeah, this person's kind of gaslighting me a little bit. I don't think they know they're doing it. And I don't think it makes them a horrible human. I think there's something going on here where they're not seeing this. Or with manipulation, right? I've had I had a partner one time like, Robin, that's, emotional manipulation. I'm not putting up with this. And when I talked to my therapist about it later, she's like, yeah, that is what that was. That's a manipulate, right? To be like, because all manipulation means is to try and change something, right? If you're manipulating a piece of clay, or and so when we're trying to change someone else's behavior, right? So I think in that example, I was like, wanting her to do something, or she was doing something that was hurtful. And I was like, if you don't do this, then I'm going to feel really sad or really hurt or really whatever. Right. So it's like I was putting that on her. If you don't do this thing, and I was trying to change her behavior by saying, that whatever. And I was like, okay, like I could look at that. I didn't see that in the moment. It wasn't intentional, but we learn this from little children, how to, we tell a white lie so we don't get in trouble, right? We learn how do I need to be with my mom so that she behaves the way that I need her to behave. And so we learn these strategies for survival, and they're deeply ingrained. And so all I'm saying is that when we shame them, and I have nothing to do with that, I would never engage in that behavior. You're lying to yourself, and you're missing out on something that's actually here to bring you into your highest self and into the life that you most want to live. And so, Debbie Ford, when she talks about, doing shadow work, we all have the shadow, right? And we all have the light and the dark. We have all of these things as a part of us. And when we deny them, and we all want to celebrate the, shiny, great things about ourselves, but we want to hide the things that we're not proud of, instead of being willing to just own it and be like, you know what? Yeah, that might be a part of me. Let me take a look at that and be accountable for that and own that. And when we do that, not only can we grow from that experience, but it also gives us compassion for other people, right? I talk about emotional abuse. If someone's being emotionally abusive, I can totally just say that. And it doesn't mean for me that they're an abusive person. I don't make it about them. It's just a behavior, right? And the other day I was listening to something on the radio, and someone was making all these transphobic comments and saying this really nasty stuff. And I was responding to my partner at work, and I said nasty shit about her, and I caught myself, and I was like, I used language that I'm like, I do not use. And I was like, that was emotionally abusive language, and it's not okay, right? It doesn't matter the trigger or the excuse. And I'm like, and I had to catch myself in that. But when we're so afraid of judgment, and I'm not going to be okay, and I'm going to be shamed, we can't actually own our experiences, and we can't actually look at our own darkness, at our own violations, and learn from them. And so I want to talk today about boundary violations. I'm going to give you some examples of times where I've violated people's boundaries, why that happens, what it looks like, and what we can do to move forward in a productive way. Okay, because again, when we can look at these things, understand them, acknowledge them, and find a way to move through these hard and painful parts of our humanity, which, by the way, are just a part of the human experience. It doesn't mean that anything has gone wrong. They're all here to teach us something. We can't have light without dark. We can't understand love without pain. We can't understand compassion and empathy without, having to forgive ourselves, having to forgive someone else. Like, these are all valid and important and really useful experiences that are here for us to grow. And so this can actually create deeper connections, more respect, more intimacy, and bring us closer to one another if we can go through them, and be willing to let down our walls, let down our anger, let down our stories, and see, like, what might I be missing? And so I want to talk about it instead of just denying it. So this is what we're going to talk about today. Violating boundaries. So first I want to talk about intentional violations, conscious violations of a boundary, right? Maybe there are times that we do this unconsciously where it wasn't on purpose, but there are times where I have violated people's boundaries intentionally. So what a boundary is a request, right? So often we think a boundary is telling someone else what they can or can't do, and that's not a boundary. We can't change another person. That's manipulation, that's control. A boundary is, I need some space, and what that means is I want you to not text me for a week or call me for a week because I need some space to, kind of decompress, whatever, think through stuff. So if you text me, I won't respond, right? So a boundary is all about what I'm going to do. It's not about controlling another person. When we feel like the other person has to change or we have to control them, we can't do that, A. And then we feel really disempowered, really violated. And it just brings up a lot of nastiness. And so a boundary is something, that you communicate as a request, right? I am asking that you do not come over unannounced. If you come over unannounced, I won't answer the door, right? I had that with one of my clients, and her mom would always come over unannounced. And so she had to communicate that boundary. And the boundary was what she would do, right? With her body, her mind, her life, right? I won't answer the door. So intentional violations. What I want us to think about in your life, if there's ever been an experience where you have intentionally violated someone's boundary, you knew you were violating a boundary. The components here to think about are, first, taking an honest inventory, being willing to do the honest inventory and looking at yourself, right? Like, why did I do that thing? What was my reason? What was the emotion behind that, right? And do you truly like your reason, right? Was this coming from love and integrity, or something that I really felt was important? Or was, if I'm being honest with myself, was I being selfish, anxious, desperate, angry? Was it coming from a big fuck you, I don't care, right? What was the energy behind it? Because if that was what the energy that it was coming from, then that's some work that you have to go and do and clean up. So a boundary violation that I committed one time was for a friend, was with a friend, and her and I had been friends for several years, good friends, and she had a child with whom I had a very sweet and loving and important relationship. And when we had this falling out, it had been kind of going on for a while. And she asked me, it was this kid's birthday, and I had gotten her a gift that she had said she wanted, and she was really excited. And we shopped for it together. And I was like, all right, I'll bring it by on whatever day. And but because my friend was just so angry, she's like, I don't want you at the house. I don't want you, blah, blah, blah. Like, if you want to mail the gift, you can, but I don't want you coming over. And I thought about that, and I was like, I was like, I don't need to talk to her or see her or anything like that. But I was like, I actually have a relationship with this kid outside of her. And I knew that we weren't going to speak again, and that I was probably never going to see this kid again. And so for me, I was thinking about that experience, and I was like, you know what? I didn't, I was like, I'm not okay with just disappearing out of this kid's life after, several years of building a really loving relationship. I made a promise, and I was like, I want to give this kid her gift, and I want to, just say that I love you. And I didn't want there to be any wondering in her mind of like, why did Robin just disappear? She never came. I never saw her again. Right. That kind of thing was what was in my heart and in my mind. And I was like, I'm just not okay with that. And so for me, the way I interpreted that boundary again was, I was like, this is a wall that you're putting up because you're angry. And this decision wasn't made, for the benefit of this child or anything like that. This is a you thing. And I understand that. And I hear that request. And I was like, and I chose not to honor it. I chose to go ahead and come over, and I didn't go in the house, I don't think, or anything, but, or maybe I stepped in the entryway or something. But I gave this child her gift, and I said, I love you, and, happy birthday and whatever. And then I left. And I knew full well that this person was going to interpret that as a boundary violation, that they were going to be angry, upset, all of those things. And I was okay with that because I liked my reason, right? When I truly took my own honest inventory, I'm like, this isn't out of me wanting to force a conversation or have, there was no ill intent there. It wasn't, for me, that was just, I was like, you know what? I want to do what I said I was going to do for this kid. And I'm okay with her being upset about that. Everyone might disagree. There might be people that are like, nope, you shouldn't have done that. You should have honored her request, whatever. But for me, I was okay with my reason. And then I left, and I never, I didn't speak to her again, and I let her have her space and whatever. But that's an example of taking the honest inventory. And do you truly like your reason? There have been times that I have done intentional boundary violations where I didn't like my reason, right? Maybe someone said, I don't want to talk about this right now, or I just need some space, or, you're living together and they're like, don't come in my room, I just need blah, blah. And when I'm filled with, anxiety and desperation, or anger, I'm like, no, we're talking about this right now. And I force the conversation and I come in anyway, right? That's a violation of a boundary. Somebody has asked, requested, space or whatever. And maybe you didn't honor that request, and you violated a boundary that they requested very directly, but you were violating it from a place of emotion that was angry, defensive, anxious, desperate. It was all, the focus was all on you, right? And so that would be potentially an example of about a boundary violation that maybe wasn't coming from a place of love or integrity that you feel good about. So that's the first thing with those kinds of violations. I would encourage you to take an honest inventory and really check in with yourself. Where was that coming from? And what was coming up for me? And if there's something that wasn't from love and integrity, then that's your opportunity and that's your work to go in and clean that up, right? And to take accountability for that.